I thought about something or thought about someone, thought about some of my experiences from back in campus, and seeing how that, no, there are good people out there, and so long as that there's good people out there, that's going to balance out the evil in the world, and I was okay with that.
I'm going to ask the last question and then we'll take it back to the audience now. One of the most heartbreaking images I remember dealing with your ordeal, Muhammad, is seeing the picture of Dr. Salah, your father. Inshallah, may Allah give him freedom, and all those who are unjustly imprisoned in Egypt and all over the world. When you were brought into the court, I guess, conscious, semi-awake, I think, after your hunger strike, and he had his hand over your head, trying to convince the judge. Can you describe that moment if you remember it? And how did it make you feel? And I'm sure how hard it must have been on him seeing his own son almost dying, because you literally were semi-dead at that time.
In the 8 months that I was with my father saved my life 9 different times. He was acting as a de facto nurse. And every time I passed out, he would grab a hard candy and rub it under my lips so that I can have some sugar in my system so that I can be revived. Because we're 6, 7 layers in where you have to knock on the door, and by the time the guard comes and opens and brings the nurse, I would have been dead. So, and then being in a literally a room that's, 2.5 by 3 meters, whatever, very small room with someone for 8 months, you get very close to him. So aside from him being my father, and aside from him becoming my best friend in my imprisonment period, he also someone who saved my life 8 or 9 different times. So they realized how close I got to my dad, so they separated us after we had been together for so long. And I was in a hospital outside of the prison. And we would meet in the hearing. So I was coming from the hospital on the stretcher, and I remember that day, honestly, my blood sugar was like 14. My blood pressure was like 80/30. My INR was like 12, which, anyone that knows anything about medicine, I should not have been alive. And I hadn't seen my dad, the person who saved my life, my best friend, my father. I hadn't seen him for like 3.5 weeks. And after literally a huge fight as they were separating us. So I'd seen him, and I was half conscious, and when I saw him, and we were in the middle of the courtroom, and I was, the images later I saw didn't capture, I was handcuffed in my stretcher, so just trying my best. My dad is anyone that's ever met him, he's like a bulk of positive energy. Even in prison, he slept 4 hours a day. In 150 days, he wrote 9 books in prison. So when I saw him, I needed him. I needed to embrace him. I needed to hug him because I wanted energy, positive energy. I wanted morale boost. I needed him at that moment, and he was right there finally. So it was a very memorable moment. And subhanAllah, the cameras caught it. And, you guys were able to see it, but yeah.
What was he telling the judge?
Well, I don't remember. I need to go back and look at the video. Honestly, I was in and out. He was asking him to have just a little bit of sympathy. Funny enough, that judge, when he gave us, which is, the same time last year, April 11, 2015, he had an entire press conference after he gave my father, my friend's death sentences that he gave me, and 38 others life sentence. He came out and said that we got the Mufti's permission to give Muhammad a death sentence, but in sympathy for his condition and for his young age, we're giving him a life sentence. Like that's any different. So.
I'm sure I have a lot of other questions, but I want to make sure we respect the time and give you some chance to ask your questions. I don't know if there's a format that you have that you want me to just choose people by the different sides of the room.
Pretty much just raise your hand and.
All right. Yes, sir.
Hi, my question's for Mr. Sultan. Terribly sorry for the experience of what you went through in Egypt. I wonder if you could address the situation with the Coptic Christians. We didn't hear anything said about them tonight, but I'd like you to comment on the situation, the plight of the Christians in Egypt, and specifically before the Morsi government, during the Morsi government, and after the Morsi government.
Thank you. The Coptics were mentioned earlier. I mentioned the Maspero massacre, which, as a revolutionary, condemned very much, and I think was the start of what was to come. I'm not a political analyst, so I can't really expound on the situation or the sectarian situation in Egypt or whatnot. But I'll say this. In Egypt, there are those that are pro-January 25th revolution, from the Islamists, seculars, liberals, socialists, Copts, and from every ideological religious background. And there are those that have for so long benefited from the corruption of the state as it stood. And those are anti-January 25th revolution. I think, again, Muslim, Sunni, Islamists, non-Islamists, seculars, Copts, all across the ideological, political, religious spectrum. And they have interests that they need to preserve, and they have swayed with wherever their interests have gone. And we've seen it. I literally, the guy that was right next door to my cell was for the longest, for 7 months, was a Copt who was charged with being a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. So, just for being a revolutionary, just for believing and being outspoken about, January 25th and its ideals and being against the military rule. So in my head, the struggle in Egypt is in no way, shape, or form sectarian. It's young people that want change, positive change, that believe in freedom and democracy. It's a simple narrative. That want a positive change, freedom and democracy, justice, that they want social justice, they want a fair distribution of wealth. And I think that there are those that will do everything in their power to make sure that those empires, their empires, literally millions and billions of dollars, that is built on the backs of those people, on those youth, that it's built on their dreams and hopes. I think that is the struggle in Egypt, so, as well as the struggle in all of the Arab Spring countries. So that's, again, I'm sorry, I don't know if I answered your question. I'm not really a political analyst. That's as far as I can say. I'm an economics major, so I tend to look at the financial interests aligned with, struggles.
Thank you.
Not
And
answered.
I would add just a quick sentence. Democracy, human rights works for everybody. A good example here. You can be a Muslim, a Jew, a Christian, an atheist. leftist, rightist, conservative, liberal. When there is rule of the law, everybody is treated equally, or at least the goal is for everybody to be treated equally. Everybody benefits. When there is oppression, repression, lack of democracy, autocracy, they will play groups against each other. You know, anybody who's watching what is happening in Syria, what's happening in any country, in Iraq, in Egypt, of course, those in power, those who are using their own power to oppress people, you know, they will have to do something called divide and conquer. So you'll have to pit people against each other. It could be tribes, it could be religions. Tell the Sunnis, beware of the Shias. Tell the Alawis, beware of the Sunnis. Tell the Christians, beware of the Muslims. Tell the Kurds, beware of the Arabs. Tell this against this. And anything that keep people divided so you can stay in power and create that fear. And the Egyptian media, for anyone who watches the media, is the king, wrote the book on that ability to kind of brainwash people and create fear within them of people who have a beard, people who are Muslim. And by the way, they do the same thing with the Muslims. Beware of the Coptics, you know, wear your protection, because if we don't protect you, the Copts are going to turn Egypt into some bad country and so on. So they do this, and unfortunately this is part of the role of dictators and autocrats in that part of the world and throughout history. I saw a sister had a question. I want to make sure I'm asking the right person. You have the right. Your hand up. You're going to have to raise your voice.
How did faith get you through, and how was it tested? I know you touched on it a little bit ago. You can delve a little deeper.
So,
Can you repeat the question, please?
so how did faith play a part in my struggle, right? I think, so I had it was definitely not a walk in the park, not by any means. I definitely, it was an emotional, mental, spiritual roller coaster that I went on. I think I made one thing. There was a few things that I kind of, when I sat down with myself and I realized that this was just, you know, it's gonna be a while. I gave myself a kind of a floor. So I told myself that whatever happens, I wasn't going to completely lose it. That however high this roller coaster ride was, if when it comes down, there was a floor there, I wasn't going to get past that. I wasn't going to completely give up on God. I wasn't going to completely give up on the notion of God being the all just. I wasn't going to give up on hope that there could be a better outcome for my situation. So the roller coaster ride was, I think it was, I was placed, or I went on that ride so that I could be refined. Personally, my strengths could be refined, because there were so many times where I thought I was at my lowest and that I could handle no more. I could not take on any more of this injustice, that I couldn't handle it. It was it. That this was as much as I could handle. This. And then I would be reminded by something. So I'll give you a little story. I like to just, because I only have my story to refer back to. So March 16, 2015, my father had been sentenced to death, or his papers had been sent to the Mufti to get his opinion on passing the death sentence. Him and 13 others, my friend Omar Malik, and a journalist, and 11 others. And I remember right when I heard it, and I just had my first thought was, oh crap, I'm gonna go back to literally nobody. Like, everyone's gonna go back, even the people that are in solitary cells are gonna go back to, you know, people that are gonna console them. Like, you know, even from the other cells, people would have, like, you know, little night, like, whatever things where they would come out and they would talk and they would ensure someone who got sentenced feels better. And, you know, I was going to a place where, and I was placed in this place for 5.5, 6 months. And I remember thinking, who the hell is going to console me? Who the hell am I going to talk about this with? And it didn't help with anything that the guy who was literally like, well, like, not to be stereotypical, like a black turbaned, long haired dude who had testified in front of the same judge that he was an Islamic State member, that he had pledged allegiance to the Islamic State. He was on the same transport car back. He had gotten released, and my father and 13 others had gotten the death sentence. It was like the epitome of the confusion in my entire life. I was so confused. And again, it didn't help that I was going to go back to this place where I wasn't going to be able to rationalize this with any other human being. So I had a ritual, like a spiritual ritual, that whenever I'd come back from the hearing, I would get some water, I would make ablution, and I would pray, just so that I can be in touch with God, with the higher power, with the all-just. Or I would recite the Holy Quran. But I swear I came back, and I didn't want to do a damn thing. I didn't want to pray. I even was looking away from the Quran. Like the Quran was right there, and I was looking away from it. I was so confused. I was so angry. How could God, the all-just, put all of us through this? How? And how is it that this man who believes in violence gets to walk free and go home the next day, while my father gets to be on death row, and God knows what would have happened to me? I was so angry. But then I was also angry at myself. I was angry at myself for having that thought, for doubting God's justice. So the embassy had gotten me a word search puzzle, and I still have it. I was able to bring it out of prison. So I wanted to take my mind off of things. So, and I remember it was page 183. Still remember it until this day. I remember I had a pen in this book, and the word search puzzle usually had like categories, like foods, countries, and here and there would have like biblical verses or something. And I kid you not, I remember taking the pen, because I had finished page 182, and I turned it, and it said, word search, Quranic verse. And I was just like I was thinking in my head, I was like, oh hell no, like that's no way, like there's no way this is happening. Like for sure the verses have nothing to do with anything. And I read the verses that I have to find the words for, and it's very short. It said, by the dawn and by night as it falls, God has not abandoned you, and He is not upset with you. وَالضُّحَى وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا سَجَى مَا وَدَّعَكَ رَبُّكَ وَمَا قَلَى. I remember I'm like, I gotta go do my ritual. I gotta go, make my ablution, pray, and just hope things get better. And they did. So, and to touch on that, at that moment, wallah, I remember having maybe like 100 moments like that. Some I've written about and some I haven't. Where I would be at an all-time low, thinking that I can't handle it anymore, and then I would just, in an instant, my faith would be revived and it would be rejuvenated. And at that moment, I remember thinking every single time, God just accepted somebody's prayer. Somebody's sincerely praying for me, and they just accepted it. So another take for you is, please, please, please do not for a second underestimate the power of your prayers. Not just for people in Egypt, or anyone who's suffering anywhere in the world, to just pray. That prayer will get there. Sincerely pray every single night before you go to sleep that injustice is lifted upon people who are facing you. That oppression ends. It works. It reaches people. I promise you, I was there. It helped me. So it was a battle. For sure, it was a struggle. It was an emotional roller coaster, very steep one. And I came out May 30th, 2015. If I would have stayed one more day in there, I would have lost it. Because I remember thinking that day that I doubted my ability to hold that floor. And that was as much as I could handle. And I was let out. Wisdom of God, help of people, all of that. I got out when I could handle no more. And that's God's proclamation that He will It's a proclamation. It's nothing to be doubted. That God will not burden you with more than